Good morning, and welcome to another episode of All About America's Team. This is our third season of covering the Cowboys, and Ray and I thought there was no better way to start it off than bringing on our panel. For those of you who are new to the show, let me introduce our guests, Kelly K9 and Mike Tag. Mike and Kelly, can you tell the audience a little bit about your journey of being a Cowboys fan and where they can find you on social media?
Go ahead, Kelly.
So you can find me on social media. It's at Kelly K9. It's at Kelly_K_9. I've come on the show before with these two fellas to discuss football before, but I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and originated from the state of Texas, and been a fan since '92. Jumped on when they won the Super Bowl, but my parents were Cowboys fans, so it was kind of always in my blood to be a Cowboys fan, and I've carried on that tradition and forcing that misery upon my kids as well. So, here we are to talk some Cowboys football.
Yeah. My son knows that misery. He's 19, so he's yet to see anything. But yeah, I'm Mike Tag. You can see him on all social media platforms. MTag at 1993. Kelly and I also do a YouTube channel, Cowboys Cave, where we talk all Cowboys, just some fans. But we've been fortunate to get a lot of interviews, former players for the Cowboys, and also get the rivalry, so we get the other side of it. So definitely having fun. Been a lifelong Cowboys fan. Tough times in the 80s, love the 90s, and it's been been rough ever since.
Yeah.
Those interviews have been great. It's been really great to see those clips that y'all have, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
But we are looking forward to hearing y'all's insight on the upcoming season, which is important for several reasons. And I think that now is a great time to start off the show. And there were 3 preseason games. I know that the third one was more important for fans and more exciting for fans because Dak was the offensive coordinator, which we were all excited to see, and it was Will Greer's send-off game. But what were y'all's takeaways from the 3 preseason games?
For me, it was just that, showcasing some of the younger talent that we have, some of the draft picks we had. I like to see, obviously I think we got to see those flashes from, Deuce Vaughn that made us realize, why he was a great pickup, and obviously a value pickup in the 6th round. See a guy like Hunter Lupke. Actually, I realized the other day that's pronounced wrong. It's Lipke. It's Lipke. It's pronounced Lipke. So I always say Lupke, but yeah, I guess it's anyway. But he flashed some stuff too, and he's looked good. So we just kind of look at some things like that. Mozzie Smith obviously kind of had his little ups and downs and stuff, but obviously he plays a position that's a difficult position to play, and it's not really going to be one that fills up the stat sheet. But it's been fun looking at all the young guys that we brought in this team. I don't feel like that that they didn't really play any of the starters. On either sides of the ball. They kind of held that back, which has been a strategy of McCarthy the last couple years. So we'll see how that shakes out. I'm always a little bit worried about rust in week 1, without anybody getting any playing time, but I'm hoping that he's done his job in the preseason and carries over in New York on Sunday night. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, definitely just piggyback off that. The running game, seeing how that was going to shake out, and you see what we got with Deuce Vaughn. That's exciting. Jalen Tolbert is probably another one that we were all a little disappointed with his rookie season, but to see him step up so far, hopefully that translates, into the regular season. And of course, the depth of defense. There was a lot of battles, man. Is seeing these young guys and seeing what we've got that could step up. It's all about that depth, a long season. So definitely excited. Don't really worry about the records. Don't get too excited with that kind of stuff. We kind of look at the plays and look at the players. But, probably the sad thing is Overshown, from that Texas logo you got, Owen. You know more about him than I do. He showed a lot of promise. So it's disappointing to see him get hurt, and hopefully he'll be back healthy next year.
Yeah, I share all the same points. The main thing for me was seeing just the offensive talent kind of show out in the preseason. I really liked what I saw from Deuce Vaughn. I think he's going to steal a lot of snaps from a lot of people there. I feel like they're going to use him in a lot of really interesting and exciting ways. And then definitely the Jalen Tolbert. I did like what I saw from him. I was very low on him after last year, with him being a high value pick and playing very minimum snaps. So the fact that he he played a lot in the preseason and had a lot of really nice plays and showed a lot of promise. So, I mean, with an offense that was very inconsistent at times last year, I feel like getting another guy with the addition of Brandon Cooks is a good place to be, and having a lot of places where you can get contribution in the passing game. And then also, I did like what I saw out of Cooper Rush too. I thought that he looked better. And I mean, I know it's preseason time, but I mean, with him being the backup and him having to may or may not see some time on the field, I did like that I saw some improvement, and the offense looked very good when he was on the field. And I liked what I saw from him. But I share all the same things, and including with the defense, even though they were playing second stringers, they didn't give up a lot of touchdowns early on in games, which was good to see. I know they played a lot of first team units and held their own with their second team. So I also like that too.
Yeah, the two guys that I thought looked really good was Asim Richards, the tackle or guard. He plays both at a UNC. The guy that runs or is the media company for the podcast, he does a lot of things for UNC. So it was cool to get his take on UNC. And he was like, yeah, he's a really good left side. Just keep him there and he'll be great. And hopefully he can become our next swing tackle. But also it was the ups and downs of my comfortability with the linebacking core. Going into the year, I was not too sure how things were going to go, because Clark, knowing that he was going to be back, and then Cox, knowing that he, his best game of his career, or his most important or most valuable play, was decking Daniel Jones, and then we haven't really seen much of him since. And hopefully he can do things with the Commanders, I believe, picked him up. So seeing Overshown was great. Coming with Gallup coming off of his ACL, I'm kind of worried that Overshown's not going to look like he did in preseason until 2025. But hopefully in 24, he looks good. But yeah, Mozzie, I think a lot of people just call him a bust way too soon. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But from the research that I was doing, all of the top, outside of Aaron Donald, all of the defensive tackles that have been taken highly in previous years are maxing out at 2.5 sacks and 25 combined tackles. And so if Mozzie can just stay around there, and I don't think he'll have too many sacks, that's not what the game plan for him is. But if he can just stay around there, I think that 4 or 5 tackles for loss, and it'll be a good pick in my opinion. And any other comments that y'all have?
No, I was just going to say for anyone who likes college football, just kind of real quick, Colorado is just running up and down the field on TCU right now in their first drive. And they shut them down on TCU's drive.
Nice. Nice.
I love that so much. I hope TCU loses so bad.
And see Coach Prime, man. It's interesting. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting run there. So we'll see what happens there. I definitely like to see that though, an upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be, especially with all of the players' Twitter tags on their jerseys. It's been a fun thing the last few months.
Yeah, no doubt.
And perhaps the most important question that we will be asking today: what are your season expectations for the Cowboys, and do you see them having any chance of postseason success?
So I think that I know that I've talked about it at length as far as what I feel, and I ain't backing off on it. I think that this year is a year that they have the most complete team that I've seen, since the 90s. And I know that this is not a team that actually has, I'm not going to say that we don't have some question marks, whether it be a little bit at the offensive line. That's still a position where I kind of tend to look at. But I think across the board, though, when I look at this team, I don't remember any team in this modern era that we're in now that's been as talented as this team is, because there's depth all across the board at every position. This defensive line is deep. This defense, I think, could be the number one defense in the NFL by year's end. I think they're most deep they've ever been at the secondary position, whether that's safety or whether that's the DB room, just all over this team. There's a lot of talent as well on offense, with the addition of Brendan Cooks, who's going to be that deep threat that we've lacked for a while, got a speedster guy that can just take the top off of the offense. You got Michael Gallup coming back, and hopefully he's going to have a resurgent career or resurgent season after last year's season that he had. It was a little disappointing coming off that injury, but you've got him coming back fully healthy. You've also got Jalen Tolbert, and he's emerging in this offense. You had a guy like Deuce Vaughn. Dowdle looked good in the preseason, so you've got a guy here that looks like a pretty solid number 2. So the running back room has kind of shaped up. You've got the tight ends, which I think that tight end room is very good. Not a lot of people are really familiar with some of our younger tight ends, whether it's Ferguson or Hendershot, but I think both of those guys are very talented at the tight end position. I know we got Schoonmaker and people really high on him, but I look at a guy like Ferguson. I think he's going to be our tight end 1. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to have a season a lot like what Dalton Schultz had in years past, because Dak Prescott loves to hit that tight end position. That's a safety valve for him. And I think he's going to utilize that a lot. And I think Ferguson is got great hands, and he's very athletic. I think he's going to make a lot of big plays in this offense for Dak. So I'm super excited. And as far as I'm concerned, it's Super Bowl or bust. We went, McCarthy a couple years ago, we went 1-and-out in the playoffs. Last year they get a playoff win, and they go down to San Francisco and play a tough competitive game. It's not like they got blown out. They didn't get bullied around like they did the year before. I felt like the defense kind of got bullied the year before. They didn't last year. They showed up. They were there. They played, if not for a few mistakes. We're looking at a different game, and then, a different outcome for the season altogether. So this year, absolutely. I think that the Cowboys have the number 1 defense, and I think that if you have the number 1 defense, you should be in the Super Bowl. And I think the Cowboys got the complementary offense to make that happen, along with the fact that the NFC is just not very deep this year. So our biggest threat, again, probably going to be the Niners. And a lot of people have talked about the Eagles. I don't consider them doing that this year. I think they're going to have a fall off season, but that's just where I stand with that. But Super Bowl for me, man, I think this Cowboys team should end up playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I keep it simple from my side. It's Super Bowl or bust. This team they've got the talent. There's no excuse. We really didn't lose anyone, and we gained Cooks, we gained Gilmore, and on top of that, the draft picks that we got, as well. We had it looks like we got a good draft on paper. You get Gallup, Tolbert coming, hopefully if he does what he does. That was a lost season last year. So this team has got the talent. There's no excuse, barring any catastrophic injury. There is no excuse for this team not to be in the NFC Championship and really win the Super Bowl. This ain't the Eagle podcast. We don't want to just get there. We go there to win. So that's my expectations of this team. To all of Kelly's points, there's no I'm not going to rehash all of those because he said it so well, but this team's talented. Enough's enough. Dak Prescott, playoff time, he's going to show up. He's going to have to show up. And I think with this defense, the sky's the limit, but Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength. I also think it's Super Bowl bust. There's no excuse to have this good of a team and not get to the NFC Championship game. The defense has been amazing the last 2 years, and it should be even better this year. I think their secondary position is top 2 in the league, maybe 1. And even with Gilmore, Gilmore's going to allow Trayvon Diggs to be a little bit more of a gambler, which I think is what he's best at. He's improved in his coverage since his rookie year, but I do think that he's the best when he's ball hawking and going for takeaways. So I really like the Stephon Gilmore acquisition. But one of the things that does give me a pause, and it's a little bit pessimistic, but I think it's a decent point, is the fact that McCarthy calling plays. The last time we saw him calling plays, we had Aaron Rodgers calling him basically an archaic old timer. And I do think you have to, believe, see it before you believe in that sense, because he really hasn't been a genius play caller. Since like the maybe 2014, 2015, that's been almost 9 to 10 years ago. So I do want to see what he's got. I want to see a couple of games with him, calling the plays before. I assume that he's going to be better than Kellen Moore, who had the offense at a number 1 in the league. But Overall, I mean, like you said, the conference is weak. This is a great opportunity. I think Dallas will be fighting for the division with Philly. I do think they will win the division because, like you said, Philly will probably take a step back, and they lost a lot of people on their staff. So do you think this is an opportunity for Dallas to go for that 1 seed? And if they get that 1 seed, then they should be able to win one playoff game. But I mean, it's definitely I say it. I feel like I say it every year. It's a show it to me, Dak season. I mean, with this team around you, you gotta at least get to the Super Bowl for me. Anything lower than that, I'm just like, come on, man. Like, we see it every year. So as long as he limits mistakes, doesn't do anything stupid in the postseason, this team should be fine.
Yeah, and I think you all said it perfectly. The only thing that I wanted to go off on was, Kelly, your point about the tight end room. I was wondering what they were going to do with Hendershot, because I thought that John Stevens Jr., before he tore his ACL, was a lock to make the team, and there were some reports that Hendershot may be on his way out, especially last season with his inability to catch the ball at times. We saw that against Titans. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, because in my opinion, the tight end room is Ferguson, Schoonmaker, and then Hendershot number 3. And we'll see how things go. But next year, if Stevens comes back, and I know that Dallas has him as a wide receiver, but he kind of played both. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But yeah, Super Bowl or bust. I think to Ray's point about the Aaron Rodgers comments, I think he's going to make a comment on it. Anything doesn't go his way, he's just going to complain. And I think that hopefully we don't see that in New York. But it was interesting to see that even after they made the coaching change, they were still never really able to make a big playoff push. So it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully McCarthy. I do think that the Giants game out of any week of the season may be I don't want to say worse, but the most hiccups on offense. Which is why I like them. Why I liked Dak being able to call the plays the last week of preseason to get more comfortable, and Mike being able to see what Dak liked to call in certain cases on the field. But it'll be great, and it'll be good to see. Thankfully, Dallas has the defense that even if their offense is kind of stagnant week 1, Micah, who is like a bat out of hell, will be able to stop Daniel Jones and the Giants offense until they can get things going.
Yeah. Just one more program update. It's 7-0 Colorado. TCU drove right down the field and then threw a pick in the end zone. So
yeah,
that's what I like. I like that.
I just love Prime, and I think he could change college football if he has success. So sorry.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I wanted to say on McCarthy, the only thing I'll say is Aaron Rodgers. The only Super Bowl he won was with McCarthy. He ain't won shit he ain't won crap without him. So, all these guys that want to bash McCarthy and do all this other stuff, it's, it works both ways. Aaron Rodgers is supposed to be the next coming. He's got 1 Super Bowl. Dak Prescott wins 1 this year. They're even. Who are you going to take? You know what I'm saying? So sometimes these quarterbacks, it just seems that the media, we fall in love with certain guys and we anoint them the greatest. And don't get me wrong, Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. Don't, make no mistake about it. But they put him on this pedestal, and then they knock the other ones that maybe don't have that one. And, like I said, Aaron Rodgers has won his whole career. I mean, Brett Favre has won his whole career. If I got to hear Green Bay talk about this legacy of quarterbacks they had, they've had this for 30 years, and they got 2 Super Bowls out of it.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, you can be top 5 all time, and it's still not guaranteed you're going to be Patrick Mahomes and get to the Super Bowl every year. So, or every other year. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot that goes into winning the Super Bowl. And I mean, this Cowboys team is definitely head and shoulders better than a lot of the Aaron Rodgers teams, just because they have a solid top tier defense. So this it just goes back to Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking about their season expectations, what record do y'all predict that Dallas will have for the upcoming season? And Dallas has a good amount of tough games, but they also have a good amount of really easy games. And what matchups do you think will tell us the most about the team, and if they will have any hope of playoff success and a Super Bowl berth?
So I had the Cowboys winning 13 games this year, one more than they did last year. But I would say that if the Cowboys won 12 games, or even if they won 11 games, I wouldn't take it as a sign that they stepped back. I would take it as a sign that they just played a harder schedule this year, because their schedule is actually, is going to be a lot harder. But obviously, you look towards the teams that you think that are, teams that you would meet in the playoffs or possibly in the Super Bowl. So, you're going to look at matchups like when we play the Eagles. Obviously, that's going to be a team that was one of the top teams in the NFC last year. So just basing off last year, you're going to look at the Eagles. You're going to look at when we play San Francisco in October. That's going to be a game that I'm going to want to see how we perform. The Buffalo Bills game, another one. So, I mean, I'm playing the AFC East. Really, all those teams out there are looking pretty solid this year. So, there will be a lot of good matchups this year for the Cowboys that you can kind of not necessarily hang your hat on, but get a better idea of where we stack up against some of the top tier competition. And that's, I think that's the case, every year that you go into. You want to see what your team does against the best of the best. So that'll give us an idea. But yeah, I mean, right away, we get a chance to play a team that was in the playoffs last year with the New York Giants. And, Mike's talked about the Giants and said, he thinks that they're going to be pretty, for less of a better word, pretty shitty this year. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think the same thing. I think that the Giants kind of, Mike's phrased it, and I agree with it, caught lightning in a bottle. So, but it'll be interesting, though, because it'll still be a competitive game. I'm sure that Giants did add some pieces on offense to try to make their offense better. But, they didn't upgrade the quarterback position. So that's, it's kind of a wash for me. So, but yeah, I mean, I got the Cowboys winning 13 games, and we got a difficult schedule this year, so it'll be a lot of good games to watch.
Yeah, and originally I had 11 wins for the Cowboys, and then Kelly and I did on our show. We kind of broke down every game, and I ended up with 12. So I'm going to stick with 12 wins. I didn't think I thought the Cowboys would win less but be better because of their schedule. To your point, I think the game on the calendars on my birthday, October 8th, San Francisco. That is a mental game for the Cowboys. You've seen it in years past. You've seen it with these other teams. They got to get over that hump, and they've got to beat San Francisco. If they don't, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I know it's only one game. It's kind of early in the season, but I think mentally they've got to go in there and they've got to beat them. I think some of the other games that are intriguing, when you look late in the year, you're talking about Buffalo, Miami back-to-back. I have them losing both of those games. I just think going up to Buffalo on the road and then coming down to Miami, that's going to be a tough stretch for them. So, but overall, I think they'll be 12-5. I think they'll be good. I think it's going to be a great season because I got us winning the Super Bowl. But I think the schedule is harder. So that's what I said, man. If they don't win 13 or 12 games, it's not that they're not as good. And I think, to Kelly's point, I think the Eagles are going to face that. The Eagles got a tough schedule, as well. They've got to play Kansas City, this year, and the AFC East. And I think we have the NFC West. So we've got the tougher divisions in both conferences that we've got to play. So it's going to be interesting to see how this season shakes out with the record.
Yeah, I'm hovering also around that 12-5, 11-6 prediction. I'm gonna go with 12-5. I wrote 11-6 down, but I do kind of think that Dallas is a good enough team to get 12 wins. I think the three games that I have that are kind of going to be the testers for this team, I think, are San Francisco, Buffalo, and then Miami. I mean, San Francisco, for the reasons you said, that's a team that's knocked them out the last 2 years. Buffalo's super talented on offense, and their defense is stout as well. They're also a pretty complete team, so that will be a good test late in the year. And then also Miami, with the fact that they have basically track stars at the wideout position, and it's going to I think that will be a good test for the secondary to kind of get them ready for the postseason if Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are healthy. So just having to go against those three teams, I think, is kind of going to give us a picture on what the Cowboys are. I didn't include the Eagles because no matter how poorly Dallas is doing during the year, they always kind of show up to play the Eagles, it seems. So I don't really think that is much of a show me game. The one other game that I had is the Chargers game, with it being a Kellen Moore reunion in type way. I mean, see how the defense does against Kellen Moore's offense. They also have a pretty solid team, and I almost said San Diego, but lost in LA. So that'll be a good matchup as well. But I'm going to go with 12 wins. I do see a chance where Dallas always seems to have that one hiccup game where they just kind of inexplicably lose to some team like maybe Washington or Carolina or whoever they play. But I do think they'll get out of the regular season with 12 wins. And I mean, that may be good enough to get the number 1 seed. I don't know, but I do think it'll be good enough to win the division. So they'll definitely have a top 4 spot in the postseason.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me a month ago or a little while ago, I would have thought that this would have been a pretty awful season just based off of who they were playing and the uncertainties on the roster. But after doing some self-reflection, deciding to be a more positive fan and look for hope. Last night I had them at 9-8, but after the only game that I was kind of wondering about was a Seattle game. So 10-7 is where I have Dallas going. And the most difficult games, like y'all said, going to Buffalo in the middle of December, even from 2016, Dak in the cold has never been as good as he normally is. And I know that Ray and I saw our freshman year, Dallas playing against the Patriots in a tundra and just how awful that game was. So hopefully wishing for a better, more success this go around. But yeah, 10-7, 2 teams or multiple teams last year made the playoffs at 9-8. And hopefully same can be said for this year. But I think that the games against the Jets, 49ers, Chargers, Seattle, Bills, Dolphins, and Lions are really going to determine how the season goes. If they play well against them, then they could probably beat any team. And if they don't play well or if there are a lot of hiccups, then I think that it will. Yeah, I think that those few games are really going to determine their success.
Well, 10 wins, you're bringing me down. I'm not going to let you do that. So,
yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna break the internet with what his actual prediction was because it's pretty inexplicable.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
I mean, I told him I would alter the opposite. Like, dude, like this record makes absolutely no sense.
Well, I think
that they.
If I remember last year, wasn't the record like 7-7-10, or didn't you have? I mean, you had a horrible prediction last year too. So if we're going by predictions, you're gonna, at least we get you up on the positive side of things, So because if I remember last season, it was pretty bad too, and I was like, no, there's no way.
Yeah, there's a few of people that Ray and I know do sports betting, and they always ask me who I think's going to win. They always do the opposite, and it always works out. So,
all right. Well, now I feel better.
See, that seats at 10-7. Now it's probably going to be more like if we're going to go 16-1.
Yeah.
Hey, if they do, you know who to thank.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just doing my duty over here.
Yeah.
But transitioning from that, there are some few season awards that I'm curious who y'all want to give them out to. MVP, we can start off with that first, and then most improved player, biggest disappointment, and then who you think the rookie of the year for Dallas is going to be.
All right. So let's see. So MVP of the team this season, that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as far as that goes, I would say probably. I mean, it's hard not to say Micah Parsons because I think he's the most athletic and electric person on this team. Whenever number 11's on the field, people watch. And not to get too off track here, but I did see a thing this morning that Micah Parsons actually tried to change his number to number 0 this offseason. I would have been super pissed if he would have done that.
Yeah.
I got 2 number 11 Micah Parsons jerseys. I would have been very angry if he would have changed his number to 0. Thankfully, he bowed out of that. Jaron Curse, anyway, whatever. But Micah Parsons is the guy for me. It's the MVP of the team, just because. He's the kind of guy I love the kind of player that is cocky but backs it up, right? He goes out there and calls his shots, and he backs it up. So he does what he says he's gonna do. So, and this year he's talking about, he said he wants to win a Super Bowl, and and I believe that he's a guy that can do that and be the catalyst of this defense. So, I don't know. Do you want me to run? Do you want me to run down all of them and pass it along? All right, I can do that. So I didn't know if you wanted to do that. So most improved player. Yeah, for me, I think that I'm hoping anyway that it's Michael Gallup. Just because I think, obviously last year he had a pretty down season compared to what we've seen in years past with him. And he's been a guy who can make some incredible catches. He's got great body control. The toe tap magician, I like to call him, because he's made some really top tier catches, whether it's, the sideline catches, corner end zone catches. So I thought he had a down year last year. I think that he can definitely have a resurgent year this year. And, it's possible. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could have 3,000-yard receivers this year with CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and then Michael Gallup. I thought that was a possibility back, when the trio was together and they had Cooper. So it's one of those things where Gallup he's a good receiver. I think he'll have a bounce back year this year. And then the next one was biggest disappointment.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Well, as far as that goes, I'm hoping that there's not any disappointments on here, but if there would be, it would probably be at that, on our offensive line when it comes to, Terrence Steele. I'm a little worried about him. I know they've said that he looks pretty good coming back from that injury, but I mean, it's still a lower leg injury. Offensive linemen that, they're going to need their legs. That's they're planting off of and using that power. So I'm hoping that it's not Terrence Steele. It's hard for me to say who really, though, is going to be a disappointment, because I feel like every player on this team is going to be better than what we saw last year. I don't really see anybody regressing on this team. But I mean, I guess, I don't know, holding my feet to the fire on that one, man. I mean, I would say in fans' eyes, it's probably going to be Mozzie Smith. And the reason I say that is because he's a number one pick. He's the first pick of the draft. And I think that people have unrealistic expectations for him. So I don't think he's going to be a disappointment, but I would say at the end of the season, when we look back, a lot of the fans are going to say Mozzie Smith. And I think that's because a lot of people expect him to step in and be a Ndamukong Suh, an Aaron Donald right off the bat. They'll probably even compare him to Jalen Carter that the Eagles have. They're not the same. I feel like he has a potential to be better down the road. And I think that he's going to, it's going to take a little bit of time to get him there, though. I don't think he'll progress as fast as maybe some of these other players. So, and then, was it Rookie of the Year? Is that the last one?
Yeah.
Doing that one too. All right. So, and then for that one, for Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say, I think Deuce Vaughn, man, he's been the guy that I've been highest on since we drafted him. He was my favorite draft pick. And I think Deuce Vaughn is going to push for a lot of playing time. I think that he's going to be a guy that you're going to find it very hard not to have him out on the field because of what he brings, not only in what he can bring in the run game, I think more in the pass game, just because he's a guy that's electric. When you get him in open space, but he can catch the ball. I mean, he was a great pass catcher in Kansas State. And, I saw times where, he would make plays. He made a couple of plays. There was a touchdown play where I think it was against maybe West Virginia. Anyway, he laid out, like a wide receiver, completely laid out and snagged the ball in the end zone to make a touchdown grab. So I think he's going to be your Rookie of the Year, because I think he's just a guy that's going to be electric and hard to keep off the field. I think he's going to make a lot of plays. I don't think he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher by any means, but I did mention at the beginning of one of our shows just recently that I think that Deuce Vaughn has the capability to have over 1,000 yards from the line of scrimmage by year's end. I could see him being that kind of player. So very excited about watching him. So yeah, he'd be my rookie of the year.
Yeah, no, a lot of similar ones, but I'll take it a little different to make it, so we're not regurgitating the same thing. I think Parsons is important, but I'm going to go with Dak. All the pressure's on Dak. Everything is on Dak. The media is against Dak. Half the fan base is against Dak. The pressure is always there. If you watch Michael Irvin, if you didn't, Go watch the pregame in college football, and they asked him to talk to Colorado, and what he talked about was pressure, and pressure equals focus on each opportunity. And he was almost, if you listen to it, it sounded like he was talking to Dak with everything that all the noise and everything he hears from. So to me, if Dak's the best player on our team, we're winning the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a quarterback-driven league. So, but I think Parsons is pretty damn important. But I didn't want to say that since Kelly already did it and got deep into it. The most improved player for me going on defense, I mean, Jerry's already talked about it. He's shown improvement with his driving ability, reducing speed. I think he'll get double-digit sacks, Sam Williams. So I think Sam Williams is going to be the most improved. I see him taking that next jump up to double-digit sacks. Disappointment, it is hard. I'm a positive person. I'm one of those positive fans. I never want to talk down on any one of our players. But the offensive line, like Kelly said, I think something's going to happen there. Now, to me, the disappointment, but it's going to be obvious because it's going to happen, is I think Tyron Smith is going to be gone for a while. And that'll be disappointing to me. So if I was going to say disappointment, to be that. But to what Kelly said, Steele, you see these guys coming back from these injuries, and it's never as fast and it's never as quick as you'd like. And we don't have depth behind these guys. I mean, they just haven't looked good. If we do, I mean, they better show something quickly, because I just think that's the biggest concern we have with our team is O-line. So hopefully we won't see disappointment there, because that could mean trouble for our team. And rookie of the year, Mozzie's going to get a lot of, he's never going to get the accolades. He's never going to get the flowers. I mean, you saw a lot of that with Russell Maryland when they drafted him one out of Miami back in the 90s, but he was an integral part of that defensive line. But it's hard not to say Deuce Vaughn. It's hard not to pull for this kid. I don't know if you guys watched that, the Deep Blue, where they did the draft war room, and just, I mean, tears to my eyes when I think about it, watching it with my son, is that moment with him and his father, and the size, and it's finally catching up to you, and you're not going to get drafted. And the Cowboys, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, and the Cowboys draft you, and just everything that went with it. This kid don't have a chip on his shoulder. He's got a brick on his shoulder. I just think you're going to see something special from him. I saw him, at the Big 12 championship. I just happened to be there for the Cowboys were playing that weekend, and I saw what he did in that game. I didn't watch him a ton, but you just kind of saw him. But I know Kelly's talked a lot about him. You see the highlights. I mean, he's run big against big competition. It's not like this kid's in some small school playing D2 and playing a bunch of scrubs. I mean, he had like an 80-yarder against Alabama. So, I mean, they've gone against serious competition, and he's excelled. So I have no doubt he will. And I think the size is going to be used to an advantage getting behind that offensive line. So to Kelly's point, I mean, 1,000-yard total yards from scrimmage is pretty bold, but I don't know if it's that far-fetched, I'll be honest with you. So that's my 4.
Yeah, I have very similar ones. I'm going to go with Mike Parsons as the MVP. I mean, I see him getting another year where he has 14-plus sacks. He's a difference maker. He's everywhere in the field. He's always going to give the opposing quarterback problems just because he can get to the opposing quarterback with ease, it seems like. Even if they double him, he's still going to get there. So he's my MVP. As for most improved player, I'm going to go with Jalen Tolbert, and that comes with a surprise, definitely to Owen. But my reasoning is he was so bad with year one, he can only go up. And even if he has an average wide receiver season for an NFL player, it's still going to be definitely most improved for me. I mean, the only competition is maybe Michael Gallup, as you said. But I think a contribution from Jalen Tolbert is going to be more valuable than a Michael Gallup contribution, especially with Brandon Cooks being in the wide receiver room. So I'm going to go with Jalen Tolbert. As for my most disappointment player, I mean, it's going to come off as a really, negative comment, but I do think it's a good point. I'm going to go with Dak Prescott, and the only reason why is because I don't think the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl, even though I say it's Super Bowl or bust. And I mean, Dak could have a better statistical season. He could have fewer interceptions, more touchdowns, more yards. But if the Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl, a lot of fans are going to blame Dak Prescott for it. So I definitely, that's kind of why I have him as my disappointment player, especially with the Trey Lance stuff, as you mentioned before we even started. I mean, even if Dak Prescott is an MVP in the MVP conversation, dealing all year, and then they get to San Francisco in the divisional round and they lose, then the entire fan base is going to be like, well, I hope we see Trey Lance next year starting week 1. So or not the whole fan base, but like you said, the 50%, 55% of the fan base are going to be calling for Dak's job and wanting Trey Lance to start. So I do think that Dak Prescott, if the season does not go the way we think it's going to go, I think he's going to be the sacrificial lamb in that regard. So that's why I kind of have him as my most disappointing player, just to put someone in that spot. And then as for my rookie of the year, I'm going to also go with Deuce Vaughn. I mean, I've been very locked in on Deuce Vaughn just because I went to Baylor 4 years, have grown up a Baylor fan, and every time we played Kansas State. It's like we got or even Iowa State when I think it was Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall was at Iowa State. But I mean, those were the two teams. It's like Deuce Vaughn, Breece Hall. You got to keep them in check. You got to stop the run. And sure enough, no matter how good the defensive line played, there was always that one or two plays where he'd get loose. And I mean, he did it against Baylor. I think he had a pretty long run. I don't know if he scored, but it seemed like every year he was always doing something. And I mean, a lot of people knock him for his size. He's in a lot of memes, but he's a good player, and I do think he's gonna, as you said, steal snaps and contribute. And I definitely think there's a possibility that he can reach 1,000 yards from scrimmage.
Well, I'm gonna try to be different. I'm not sure if you pronounce it. It's Falcone.
Okay. But I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, my MVP is Dak. Last night, I subjected myself to watching every single interception that he threw, and it was a painful 10, 15 minutes. There were a lot of just bad throws, but also ones where, I remember I think it was against the Packers where Dak threw it between the hashes, and then he tore into CeeDee Lamb after. So if they can just cut down on the I'll call them stupid plays. One of the things that I heard at a training camp was that for whatever reason they didn't do it before, but the wide receivers now know, depending on the play, how many dropbacks or how many steps Dak's taking, so they know when to cut, which you'd think this would have happened years ago, but there'll be less communication hopefully. And sadly, a lot of these games that Dak threw interceptions, he threw 2 in the same game.
Yeah.
And if that can be cut down, hopefully it'll be an overall just a great year for him. And even after having this quote unquote bad interception year, he still has one of the best touchdown to interception ratios of all time. So yeah. I'll take it as
just do yourself a favor and watch Keyshawn Johnson's video if you haven't on talking about Dak's interceptions. He's a receiver, top receiver. He talks about it. It's a little bit, it was eye-opening to me, but just go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's
who is it again?
Keyshawn.
Okay, Johnsson. Yeah. He's one of the new. He was on Undisputed, right? Is he one of the new hosts? Yeah.
Yeah. Number one pick as a wide receiver when he came out.
Okay, I'll have to do that for sure. Most improved player, I have Damone Clark. I think that the linebacker room will, outside of Leighton Vander Esch, who hopefully can stay healthy. Outside of him, thankfully they have like 7 safeties on the roster. But Clark, he looked really good in preseason, and his role will be even larger with Overshown going down. And he looked pretty good last year coming off of a neck injury, and hopefully he can have a really good year this year. My biggest disappointment going off of Kelly is Mozzie Smith. Based on people's expectations, I'm not going to bore y'all with all these stats, but Chris Jones had a pretty rookie year, and he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and he was picked 37 in 2016. Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best interior linemen in the league, had a pretty season and only played in like half of the games, and he was picked 19. Quinnen Williams had a pretty rookie year, and he was picked 3 in 2019. Dexter Lawrence, who's one of the best defensive linemen in the league, had a pretty season, picked 17. And then Jordan Davis, who was like the second coming of whoever you want to say. He had 0 sacks, 18 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. He started 5 games and played in 13. And if Mozzie was picked 26, and I think that you could make a good argument that all of these guys coming out of college were better prospects than Mozzie, and they're going to be asked to do very different things. And the only from what I could, from the research that I was doing, Aaron Donald's rookie year, he had 9 sacks, 48 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and he started 12 games and played in all 16. And if you expect that, then you might want to watch a different team because that's not what's going to happen. Dan Quinn mentioned that they're only asking him to, take on double teams. And if you watched all 3 games, he took on a lot of double teams, and he looked at some points, other times looked really good. My biggest flaw of his is that it takes him a few seconds to get off the snap. But that'll be fine tuned as the year goes on. But I was curious to see just kind of gaining expectations based on how other defensive linemen did. And if he has one of these seasons, from a fan perspective, you may not be all that thrilled. But the 7 guys minus Aaron Donald that I named, I think, and minus Jordan Davis, depending on how he plays. But I would take Dexter Lawrence, Quinton Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, and Chris Jones on my team any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And they did not start off all that great. So that's my 2 cents on the Mazi Smith point. And also, if he takes on double teams, there have been plenty of times that I've seen defensive tackles do nothing, or our defensive tackles do nothing, and then just quarterbacks being able to step up in the pocket. The last great defensive tackle that Dallas had was David Irving, and then he decided to just no longer play football. So hopefully Mazi can have a similar impact. Rookie of the year, I have Luke Schoonmaker. I thought that his size is very different than what Dallas has in the tight end room currently. And he's probably going to be Dallas's best run blocker on offense. And with the question marks at offensive line, his ability to block will be pretty impactful. And hopefully, I know that he is coming off of a foot injury, but he says that he feels great. So I'm gonna take that for whatever it's worth, and just hope that he's especially with Dallas's, I guess, lack of faith in Hendershot, as we talked about earlier. Hopefully, Luke is able to prove the fan base wrong, and just have a great year.
Yeah, and just one thing on I got to say it, if you don't mind.
Of course.
The thing that these fans, I mean, whoever they are, don't look at what Mazi does. If you see the team sack numbers go up, he probably contributed to that. If you see the run defense improve, he contributed to that. So he's not, you said it well. He's not going to light up the stat sheet. That's not he's not that type of player. He's not Aaron Donald. He's not going to be rushing the pass. He's not going to be getting a bunch of sacks. His job is to eat up to let the other ones feast. Yep. And if you see Parsons go from 14 sacks to 20 sacks, if you see these different things, if Tank sacks, you see Sam Williams sacks, you see these other guys, and then you see this run defense. Like, I watched one thing where they criticize him. And again, I'm not an X and O guy. I'm not going to claim to be, but he did his job. He forced the running back to go outside. The linebacker didn't do it. They get a big run. They're like, oh, look at that. Mazi Smith. He didn't. They're giving up runs because he did exactly what he's supposed to do. And that's what I'm saying is just. People just need to understand that if they're looking for huge numbers, it's not going to happen. But look at what it does to the other guys. I mean, you saw Parsons do cartwheels when they drafted him. He was begging Quinn and the Cowboys to get him because he knows he's going to do the dirty work. He's going to, not do the great things that people love, but it's going to open it up for others to eat, and that's his job. That's his job.
Yeah, my main thing for Mazi Smith is just to improve the run defense. That's the one Achilles heel for the Dallas Cowboys defense. That's been their heel for the last
long time.
6 seasons, 7 seasons, is that they struggle to stop the run. So if he can help to making them a more consistent unit there, I think that'll be a total success. Yeah, I'll praise the pick if he's able to keep the run game in check.
Yeah,
he's also going to make the linebackers' lives easier, and also Dallas. I assume that they're going to go very rotation heavy because they do have Osa. They did cut Q, so who knows? So, and then also they have Hankins, and he's probably not going to be an every down player, just on running situations. So yeah, if Mazi, I thought the pick was great. I thought they were going to take the edge from Georgia. That's who I thought they were going to go with. And I know that a lot of people were like, who the heck is Mazi Smith? But after looking into it and what his effect on the team is going to be, like y'all said, it may not be. If he does, this is awesome. He may not let up the stat sheet, but his value to the team is going to go. You have to like watch the games and just focus on him, and then you're going to really see how he plays. And outside of the Raider game, he played, I think, every snap of the first 2 preseason games, which I thought was very smart.
Yeah.
And so did Sam Williams for some reason, but that's another conversation another day. And hopefully, he just has a good rookie year, and a few months from now, hopefully we can sit down and say that he had a comparable year to all these other phenomenal defensive tackles in their rookie year.
And you say, if you guys are too young, unfortunately, but like if you look at the '90s team, that's the way the defensive line. They're like you said, they're gonna be rotation or come in waves. Yeah. But I mean, you remember like a Chad Hennings or a Tony Casillas, and those guys in the middle. They weren't, Russell Maryland. They didn't put up huge numbers, but they did the work for Haley, for Tolbert, for the linebackers to be freed up. And I think that's what you're going to see is the speed that we have on this defense is going to be, well known in the league when they see what happens. So it's exciting. I'm loving this defense, man.
Well, and not only that, I do know that, I was at the draft, and I do remember that Kansas City was a team that actually wanted to draft Mozzie. And you look at the Chiefs, they've had some success at drafting some defensive players as of late. They got Chris Jones, they got that linebacker Nick Bolton, and they both drafted both of those guys. Both those guys were 2nd round picks. So I mean, I think that the Chiefs, I feel like if it's a successful team like the Chiefs, we're going after a guy like that. That kind of, in my opinion, kind of was like made me feel a little bit better about the pick. I was like, hey, they were going to take him in the 1st round, and they felt comfortable taking him. Why shouldn't we feel comfortable taking him in the 1st round too? And we don't have a lot of history with our defensive tackles, but the Dallas Cowboys as of late has had some pretty good success in the draft overall. Outside of that, sometimes struggling with that 2nd round pick a little bit, but. Overall, the Dallas Cowboys, if you look up and down their roster, I think they do good at drafting. So I trust their evaluations of Mozzie, and I think he'll do everything that they drafted him to do. And we may see him getting the job done on a rotational basis, but I think that over the next couple of years, I think we'll see a lot of growth in him, because one thing he's got is like just freakish strength. The dude is probably one of the strongest guys on the team right now. And I think that combined with some of his freakish athletic ability that he has, I mean, if you can put those things and get it all together, like I feel that Dan Quinn can, then, I mean, I think Mozzie Smith can be a guy who's going to be your, corner piece in the middle of that defensive line for years to come. So it'll be interesting watching him develop this year, but you're right. He won't be playing exclusively. You're going to have, guys rotating out, and which is what we've talked about here. It was some of the depth that we have across that defensive line. It's a great thing to have. So it'll be nice to watch.
Yeah, I was trying to find. I forgot there was a stat that came out a few days ago about the percentage of Dallas drafted players that have had success, that are on a roster, and it was pretty high. I think that statistically they're the team that. I don't know how to word this, but they're the highest percentage of players panning out and being on a roster.
Yeah.
And Dallas does not do free agency. The only reason why they are relevant is because of their drafting ability. And also going back, I forgot it earlier, but I remembered now. The Terrence Steele talk. Duke Manyweather, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Apparently he's like the best O-line the best like private O-line guy, and he's been working with Biotish, Steele, and Smith, Tyler Smith, and Manyweather said that Steele there was one of the linemen, I think he was from the Packers, that he's had the best recovery, and it was he tore basically every ligament in his knee, and he's fine now. And we'll see how that translates. But his rookie year, I think that most Cowboys fans thought that Dak was going to get decapitated. at any given point. And then he worked with Manyweather, and he was able to become one of the better right tackles, especially in the run game. And I think that after he went down, our team their success dropped a little bit. And hopefully Tyron can play. But if for whatever reason he has to sit out a few games, Tyler Smith can go to left tackle. You can have Rogers or Bass, the UDFA, play left guard, and hopefully there not be too much of a drop off. But yeah, I was gonna say it earlier, but I just remembered it. But yeah, Steele, hopefully he can play. Because it would be great if both of our tackles can be good, and then everything else you can kind of figure out. And also Tyler is gonna be a free agent, or sorry, Biotish is gonna be a free agent after this year, so he's also working for a new deal. So if he has a good year, then they can bring him back. And it'll be outside of their record, just an exciting year to see who plays well and who can play for a contract. And yeah,
for sure.
So now looking to next Sunday night, how do y'all feel about the Giants game, and what is your prediction for the game, score prediction, or any other stats that you think will happen?
So I mean, I think the Giants game will be a win for the Cowboys. I think they'll continue their winning streak over them, extended to 11 in a row. Kind of crazy if you think about it, that Dak Prescott started off 0-2, and then his one, the Giants haven't beat us since Obama was in office. So that's been a little while. I think the Cowboys continue their dominance, though. I think they win this game. I think I picked a little bit lower of a score. I had 28-10 Dallas. And I thought that, there were some people that were saying, well, I think the Cowboys will get over 30. There's a good chance that they might. I just think that the team, the first game of the year, last year anyway, they started off, they looked pretty damn rusty last year to start off. And then obviously Dak got injured. So hopefully that won't happen. But I think they'll start off with a little bit of rust, shaking some rust off, but I think the offense will get it going. I think it'll be close, a competitive game in the first half where it'll be kind of a low scoring game. And then I think the Cowboys in the second half, that's when they pull away and kind of assert their dominance over the Giants and keep the Giants held down to. I don't think the Giants are going to, I think that 10 points will probably all come in the first half. It'll be like, maybe a 13-10 first half game, and then, Cowboys pull away and finish it off. So I got 28-10 Cowboys coming away with the win and looking pretty solid and doing it. We could see this defense go to work.
Yeah. I had 27-10, so we're close.
Yeah.
I think Dallas wins easily. I think, like to Kelly's point, I think maybe a first quarter, getting into the first half, it'll be kind of a little rust, a little feeling out process. But, I mean, Barkley's never, at least correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's ever had big games against Dallas. I think he's had like a big run here or there. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I mean, maybe I'm going to be proven wrong. I just don't see it. I don't think the receivers are scary. I think our secondary will absolutely lock them down. So I just don't see where they're going to score enough points to beat us on our defense. And, to me, those are the teams, like, you talk about like a Miami, a team that could put up points, Kansas City. Those are the ones where I'd be a little bit more concerned. But I just don't think the Giants have the offense to do it. And I don't think they got the defense to stop us. So I think Dallas wins pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm also going to pick Dallas to win the game. I do think it will be a little bit closer than y'all's two predictions. I think Daniel Jones is a decent quarterback. I do think that him being in a system that's not changing again this year, just being in the second year of the system, in a system that I did show promise in last year, I think that'll be a positive. I think he will be better. I don't see him as an all-worldly quarterback by any means, but I do think he's a competent starter. So, but like you said, they don't have the talent outside to really put any pressure on the Cowboys in the secondary. I do think Darren Waller is a huge acquisition for them because it kind of gives a safety valve for Daniel Jones, a consistent target to get the ball to. That does have size, and I do think that Saquon is something to look out for, but I don't think that the Giants are going to beat Dallas week 1. So I'm going to take the Cowboys to win 27-20 and just kick off the year with a victory.
Speaking of Darren Waller, I'm not sure if the three of y'all or anyone listening at home follows Jaron Curse on Twitter, but if you don't, I suggest you do. For time to time, he goes at it with some fans, and some Giants fans were tagging him, saying that Darren Waller was gonna, get the best of him, and as all good players do, Jaron Curse pulled up a clip of when they played the Raiders, and I think it was last year, and Waller caught it, and then Curse made him fumble, and it was very funny, and then it was just a great exchange. And Curse now wearing number 1, he's on Clemson time now, and it'll be more importantly, I have Dallas winning 24-13. Yeah, like y'all said, Saquon Barkley has a good run here and there. The last season Dallas won 28-20 and then 23-16. So I tried to pick something that was in between those two. But yeah, it'll be a really good test for Dallas's O-line going up against one of the better, or I think all the defensive lines in the East are good, and it'll be a good test to see how they hold up against them with Thibodeau, Ojulari, Dexter, and then also seeing how Bobby Okereke does, their new linebacker out of free agency, and how their new cornerback does. I think his name is Banks, I believe. So it'll be a good matchup, but I think that if our defensive line can perform as well as we think, then Daniel Jones will be in a lot of trouble. If y'all remember from last year, DeMarcus Lawrence, his best game of the year was killing Evan Neal, and I think that may be something that happens again. And Andrew Thomas and Micah Parsons going at it is always a fun matchup, one of the best defensive ends and one of the best left tackles. But I do think that Dallas wins this game pretty comfortably. Yeah.
That's good. We start off 1-0.
At least we're all on the same page with that. If anybody was picking the Giants to win, we're gonna might have just had to exit stage left here.
Yeah.
Quick question for y'all. So this is going to be the first year where Tony Pollard has to carry the load. If for whatever reason he has some fatigue or if something happens, how comfortable are y'all with Davis, Lepecki? I know that y'all pronounced it earlier. And then Vaughn. Because I was talking to a Cowboy fan last night, and he was like, I don't know how comfortable I am with that running back room behind if Pollard does not play. But how comfortable are y'all?
I think it'll be Dowdle is your number 2 guy. And I think Malik Davis. Because they cut.
He's on
Malik
the
Davis.
Oh, sorry, Dowdle. Yeah,
he's in the practice squad. So I think it's going to be Dowdle, and then it's Pollard, Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn, and then Lipke. But I feel fine, because what I think that the Cowboys will do better this year than they've done in years past is that I felt like for the past several seasons and last year, finally, we got to see them start utilizing Pollard more. But I think what they did is they leaned heavy on Zeke, because Zeke was their big money guy. Zeke was the guy that Jerry, talked about. The offense runs through Zeke. Mike kind of had that thing. The offense runs through Zeke and all this stuff. But the thing is that in the NFL, there's only a couple of running backs that the offense truly runs through, and that's probably Derrick Henry and then maybe a guy like Nick Chubb in terms of running backs that get heavy loads. Other than that, it's a dual running back system, and sometimes 3 running backs. You look at what Philly's doing; they got 2 running backs that they're going to lean on. You look at teams like last year with Atlanta, they had Algier and Cordell Patterson. So they, all these teams that run, and Atlanta was one of the teams that ran the ball, pretty damn good. So if you're running the ball well, it's just a matter if your offensive line can block in your blocking schemes. If your blocking schemes are good and your offensive line can block for your running backs, and you got competent running backs, you should be able to run the ball good. So the thing is, I don't think Tony Pollard's going to have to be a guy who's getting, 20 plus carries a game. If you can keep Pollard around, in the 15 to 17 range, then you mix in a couple, you mix in Dowdle for, half a dozen, throw in Vaughn for a few, you can find a healthy mixture of it without having to lean too heavy on Pollard. But I absolutely think that Pollard's a dynamic back. I expect him to rush for over 1,000 yards this year. I expect him to have a good season. And I think he'll be fine. I think that, this coaching staff has got enough on this offense. in terms of the running back room to spread out the carries so that not one running back is taking on too much of the load. So me personally, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just, if Pollard's going down for any long period of time, I'd be very concerned. That's just me.
Yeah,
I was for Dallas getting a veteran. I just think that, what Pollard does best is you want him to get those carries outside and you want him to be dynamic, and that's what he is. But if we're up 5 and we need an 8-minute drive, do you want Pollard pounding in between the tackles over and over and over? No. Do we have a guy that can do that? I don't know. I mean, Rico, maybe, Lipke, maybe. I don't like maybes. So that's the only thing that would concern me a little bit, because you don't want to wear him down. To Kelly's point, it's a multi-running back, league. So I like the group that we have, but I would be concerned if our number one guy went down. I just think there would be some problems, with the depth of their running back to have a horse like that. So, but Pollard won't go down. How's that? So we won't have
let's hope not. I agree with that about him. And I would say, Kareem Hunt is still out there. He's still a possibility to sign a veteran guy like that. There are still a few veteran running backs that, are sitting out there. I feel like, Zeke obviously got snatched up and Cook did. Cook was the guy that I was really kind of hoping the Cowboys would lean towards, maybe feel a lot better. But you're right. If Pollard goes down, that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Can't believe y'all haven't mentioned Ronald Jones yet.
I've never been a Ronald fan, so
did he even get snaps in the preseason? I don't even remember seeing him.
No. I don't.
I don't think he's. I'm surprised he's still on the roster.
Well, he is, because he's suspended, so they can keep him on.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, when he comes back, it'll be interesting to see if they keep him. I don't know if I can't.
I would make it a joke. Yeah, get rid of him. Get rid of him.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with Pollard. It's all about whether or not he can still healthy as being the guy. But I do think he's dynamic and he's gonna play the full season. Yeah. So I don't think it'll be a problem.
You also got guys like Turpin and Lamb that they have lined up in the backfield. Not that they would do that for any significant amount of plays, but they can work some things around to make sure.
Definitely. Yeah. They were talking about it. Like, if you look at our offense, and you got the CDs, but you got Turpin, you got Deuce Vaughn, you got some dynamic guys that you can kind of plug in there and have some fun with. So I think for McCarthy and Schottenheimer, they should be able to be very creative with the offense. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of, it's been a while since there've been this many playmakers. Hopefully it all pans out like the way we think, but this might be Dak's definitely on the defensive side of the ball, but definitely his best roster.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. I think
so. It'll be, especially with the new O-line coach and the new O-line scheme. I'm not sure if y'all saw, but Connor McGovern, for what I don't know how often they do this, but they asked him questions about his previous O-line coaches, and he destroyed Dallas's O-line coach that was before this one. So
I don't take any of that with anything, because it's like when I left my coworker and went to another one, I had nothing nice to say about him. I wanted to destroy him. So that's just, you go to one company to another, I should say. It's just, that's the way it is. So Beasley was ripping the Cowboys, and then he was begging to come back a couple of years later. You know what I mean? So with a grain of salt, they're always going to say that where they're at's the best. I mean, you've heard Cooks talk very highly of Dak and this and that. He's the here now. Of course, he's got to. Yeah. It's the ones that talk highly when they leave that just kind of shows the type of person. I don't know. I don't think it's ever cool. But
speaking of that, Travis Kelce had some positive things to say about Dak on his podcast with his brother. They were talking about how they were confused as to why Jerry, and if Kelly, if you want to give us some insight on why Jerry didn't consult anyone about the trade. And Travis was very confused. And the quote was, knowing that Dak Prescott is one of the better QBs in the NFL, and take that for whatever it's worth, but he's top 10 player in the league, best tight end. And that's a positive thing. So I figured I would say that after you mentioned Mike, about other players talking about current Dallas players?
Well, sometimes when you consult, it can be a bad thing. If you ever tried to consult a woman over where you should eat for dinner, that is a disaster waiting to happen. So when it comes down to building a team and putting things together, you don't want to ask your quarterback if he wants you to bring in competition. That's like asking your woman if you want to get a side piece. She's going to say no. And frankly, I don't deal in that. I make my decisions on my own with no need to consult anybody, and that's just that's the brass tacks of the situation.
It's a committee of one, as you say.
The committee of one.
That's why Jerry's the owner, CEO, general manager, all of it. Nobody tells him what to do.
That's right.
I was watching that draft. If you guys didn't see it, the War Room 2 is actually really good. But you notice it's like Jerry's grandson is right there too now. So it's like you see Jerry, Steven's there, and then Jerry's grandson is like right there. And he must be, I mean, time flies because he looks like a young man. So it's just, the Joneses ain't going to stop.
No, it's the dynasty of Joneses. It's the dynasty of Joneses. There will always be a Jones. It's a dictatorship there.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a Jones sitting on the throne. So, maybe, I would say this though, when it comes to that, maybe one day, maybe when Jerry's gone, it's a possibility that, they could decide if things, let's just say, heaven forbid that, that for the next 5 years, we still don't see a Super Bowl. Jerry, passes. Maybe Steven says, you know what? Maybe it's time to get an actual GM to come in and run this team, and get a guy. I mean, we talked with a guy like me and Mike. We had Moose Johnston on the show. And I'll tell you what, when you want to talk about a football mind and a guy who has the right mindset to be a GM, and we actually asked that question, if being a GM would be something on his radar, and he absolutely said yes. He jumped at it. He said, I mean, I think that's the goal, of anybody that wants to develop and work in player development and team development is to be a GM. And, so he's currently got some good things going on right now, in the USFL. So it's he's a guy that I would look to towards the future. I mean, if I was the Cowboys ownership and I'm looking to bring in a GM, I'd jump at a chance to get a guy like Daryl Johnston. I think he'd be I think he will be a GM eventually. And I think he'll be a great one.
When you hear him talk, right, Kelly? I mean, it's a different level. I mean, and I love Jerry, whatever. Listen to Jerry talk and then go listen to Moose Johnston talk about football. And it's not even close. Yeah, no. And just the way he talks about professionalism and things like that. I mean, you got Jerry, you're asking Jerry about, Sam Williams, and he's making jokes about how the fact that he dropped, at least he wasn't driving as fast as he was the year before. You would not get that kind of answer out of a guy like Daryl Johnston. He's gonna be straight laced. He's gonna let you know, hey, it was a stupid mistake by this kid. He's made now 2 stupid mistakes. We're gonna have to fix this. And I think that's what you want, and that's where where things kind of go south when it comes to Jerry. I think he's got the team's best interest in mind in terms of wanting to win. He does want to win more than anybody I know, but I think his lack of accountability sometimes just kind of is counterproductive to the culture you want to see built in Dallas. He wants to be one of the guys, and that was the problem with Jimmy Johnson. He wanted to be in the fraternity. He wanted to be one of the guys, and he wasn't. And that's what led to the demise with him and Jimmy Johnson. And I think you're seeing it now. He wants, the owners, DeMarcus Ware's talked about it. I could just go into the owner's office. I mean, you bypass the head coach, bypass the, you know what I mean? It's just, there's got to be a line and there's just not one. He's one of the guys. And you saw it by the comment he made about Sam Williams. We all laughed at it. We thought it was kind of funny. We laugh at Jerry. You listen to him on 105.3, I'm sure, when he's on there with the guys in the morning. He always has a funny story. He always has some of the things that make you laugh. He's like your crazy grandpa. But it's just, we're trying to win championships here. And I think I need Jerry to be more business minded and more focused on the task at hand, and that's winning Super Bowls. Team's too talented. 27 years. I mean, we've had a lot of players on our show, and to a man, every single one of them said it's absolutely baffling that this organization, America's team, everything that they've had, you've gone 27 years without, forget the Super Bowl, without even being in a championship game to get an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think, yeah, that's my one thing. That's like it's throwing everything out the window when it comes to roster personnel. Like the one thing that keeps me from saying Dallas is going to win the Super Bowl is just Jerry Jones being still, I mean, the accountability factor that you talked about. I just don't think that there's enough accountability in Dallas to, go all in on a Super Bowl just because of that Jerry Jones running the team and running his mouth, coming into the locker room, the bypassing the head coach. How much power does McCarthy actually have? That's just kind of my one issue with the Super Bowl. But who knows? Maybe they win in spite of Jerry Jones.
We've said that. I was just about to say that. They may win in spite of him because of the fact that they have developed such a talented roster that I think this roster may be talented enough to overcome all of that and win in despite of Jerry.
I think they pay Will McClay like he's a GM because there have been plenty of years where he's been like interviewing or just talked about being a GM, and he still stays. And also
for sure, he definitely had a big hand in that.
Yeah, and then Jerry, when he called his grandson to talk about Overshown, that I was very surprised about that because I think his grandson's he's on the UT roster. He does something for UT, and he was like, is Overshown a good locker room guy? And it was like, why are you asking? It was an interesting thing. But yeah, just that show in general, just hearing about, I think Dallas released a bunch of draft things from like Sean Lee. They released the video for, and then Dak as well. So it was cool to just relive all that.
It was a good, it was really good, the inside of it. If you guys haven't watched or any of your listeners haven't watched it, you can go on YouTube and watch it. As long as first you got to subscribe to your guys' channel, then subscribe to ours, then go watch it on Dallas Cowboys Now. But it was really intriguing, like the Des Bryant thing. They talked about Jason Witten, wanting to be he was expected to be a first round pick, and then he drops, and how he busted his door to his house, and this, the emotions and everything that goes with it. It was a really, really good, well done show.
Yeah, I think the Deuce Vaughn, Chris Vaughn, the phone call, all of that in general is going to be, for Dallas and the NFL in general, it's going to be a very big story for a while.
Yeah.
And last, but certainly not least, where do y'all have Dallas finishing in the division and in the conference, just their seeding?
I have us winning the NFC East, and I think that if we get to 13 wins, I think that's probably good enough for the number one seed. Okay. So I think we end up with the number one seed and win the NFC East. So I just think Dallas is the better team. I think they improved, and I think they made additions, whereas Philadelphia had too many subtractions on their side. They lost several starters. They lost both coordinators. They lost the Super Bowl. They lost a lot of things. So and the thing about the Super Bowl hangover is real. As Philly fans, they're just assuming that they've got enough talent and enough roster to overcome all that and make it back. But this year, you're playing a first place schedule. You just got so many things stacked against you. As much as I hate Philly, it would be remiss to me to look at all those things and think not to mention the health factor. They were very lucky last year they didn't have hardly any injuries across that team. Yeah. That's rare in an NFL team to have, right? Especially a guy like AJ Brown, who in the past has been a guy who's kind of like a Julio Jones receiver that gets injured and has an injury where he hasn't missed a couple of games, and he was healthy the whole season. So I just don't see all of that happening for him. And when you factor in all those things, I just think the Eagles are going to have a tougher time than they think they are. And so I think Dallas runs away with the NFC East this year because I think we finished with 13. I think they're closer around the 9-win range. I've said 9-8 for Philly. So see us as the number one seed and getting that first round bye, which, as we all saw last year, set up for a cakewalk for the Philadelphia Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. They play the Giants. And then they play, the San Fran team that gets their quarterback knocked out, and who I can't even tell you the name of the quarterback that they ended up playing in that game. But that's what you want to play for, is that number one seed, because you get the first round bye and you get to play one of the lower seeded teams going into that divisional round. So
yeah, Yeah, no, I mean, I had 12-5. I just have this sneaky suspicion a team that's not very good is going to get the number 1 seed because they're playing in a bad division. And the one I'm looking at is the South. So if New Orleans gets hot and Atlanta's not, Atlanta may be a team, but let's say they're not, the other two aren't very good. You can get a New Orleans team that can end up being the number 1 seed that's not better than the 2, 3. So I think I have Dallas, let's just say, going into a number 2 seed, winning the division. But then I would think New Orleans gets knocked out, and Dallas ends up, home field advantage or whatever. So, but yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it. But hopefully we're the number 1 seed, and hopefully we win the division.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you bring up the Saints as a potential number 1 seed team, because I did watch a video recently that was fantasy football related, and they were talking about that there are 8 or 9 games that the Saints play where the quarterback on the opposing team is not very good.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Saints always have a really solid defense, and their offense is pretty good. I mean, they had Derek Carr as a competent quarterback who's going to win football games, and he's got that defense to rely on, which he's never had in his career. So, but with that being said, I do think Dallas will win the division as well. I think Philly will be a little bit more competitive than 9 or 10 wins, but I do think that Dallas will win the division. 12 wins to their 11, and we'll get that 2 seed. And I mean, I think I'm going out on a limb, but I don't think it's that far on a limb. But I do think that the NFC East will have 3 teams representing the postseason again. I think it will be Dallas. It will be the same 3 teams: Dallas, Philly, and New York. And then I think the Commanders will also be competitive and be around 8 wins as well. So I think it'll be a good test for Dallas to play in a division that's all competitive. Yeah, but I do think that they'll end up winning it and then getting the 2 seed.
Well, y'all are gonna hate me. I have the Eagles winning the division. I picked them last year to win it. Last year, just watching them completely eliminate Michael Parsons from the game. Hopefully Micah can work on the read option a little bit more, but they were very good at just eliminating him from it. And Micah has been very vocal about how livid he was about that situation in general. Going up against one of the best wide receiving cores in the league and the best offensive line. I think that it'll be competitive, but I do think that the Eagles are better up front than the Cowboys are, which I think will end up leading them to having a better record. I have Dallas getting the 6th spot. I know that y'all mentioned a first round bye. I would rather them not, based off of how 2016 went, and just ever since then, I've had a fear of Dallas getting getting a bye and then them not really playing all that well. But I have the Eagles, Saints, Lions, and 49ers winning their division, and then Seattle getting the 5th spot, and then Dallas getting the 6th. And then hopefully they can ride it out.
No,
I mean, the positive thing, even
way to end the show on a positive note.
Yeah,
you should have went first.
Yeah, you should.
I gotta stop going last.
I guess to raise the positivity, even if they do get the 6th spot, the NFC is still very weak. So it's definitely a possibility that Dallas could ride through the NFC in the postseason fairly easily.
Yeah, no, I
get to the conference.
Well, I will say this, man. Again, the Eagles last year with their injuries, they didn't have very many injuries. They're only one. I mean, they're a Lane Johnson away.
Yeah.
From that O-line starting becoming a weakness, because they don't have a lot of depth on that offensive line, and on their defense. Their defense was not very good last year to begin with, and I didn't think. I mean, you look at all the top-tier quarterbacks they played. Dak dropped 40 on them. Mahomes lit them up. I mean, when they played good quarterbacks, they got lit up. I mean, Jared Goff, even in that first game of the season, dropped like 30. I think it was like 30 points on them. So their defense was suspect to me last year to begin with. Now they lost 5 starters off of that defense. That Hargraves, 12 sacks. You take 12 sacks off that season, off that defense, and you're telling me that a rookie is supposed to come in there and replace those 12 sacks that Hargraves got? That's not happening. Jalen Carter's not getting 12 sacks this year. I'd be surprised if he got double digit. It'd be a success if he probably ended up in around the 6 to 7 sack range, I would say, from that position. I don't see it. I don't know that I see that happening. So they lost some production off of that defense, and they're replacing it with a lot of rookies and unknowns and guys that don't have a lot of snaps. So I just think that Philly's got, a lot of times people will look at the previous season, and I just feel like Philly has lost way more than they've gained. And so, I don't see Philly being that competitive this year. I think they're going to have and playing that first place schedule. So I don't know, but I also hate Philly. So it's very hard for me to say anything positive against them, even if I did. I will say that I was going to tell Mike, I never draft NFC East, anybody from the NFC East. I hate doing it. Last night in one of my drafts, I'm going to try to trade him, but I took AJ Brown because there was like nobody. He was there and he's still sitting on the board, and I'm just like, man, I can't not take him, dude, because he was on the board. I needed another receiver, and I took him. But I'm gonna see if maybe I can trade him for somebody different. Maybe trade.
Mine, I don't mind taking guys in the other division. It's the quarterback. Like I'll never take.
Never do that.
Because that decides the game so much. And then if you really, you're torn, I wouldn't be able to sit him.
I mean, if I do keep him, I'll bench his ass when they play Dallas because I refuse to have to root for one of my fantasy football players to do good against the Cowboys.
Even in garbage time, you can't do
Correct. It's not going to happen. So
I'm the opposite. I don't draft Dallas Cowboys on my fantasy team just because, I mean, I criticize the team enough, and having to rely on them to get fantasy points is just too much. So
that's a good one way to look at it too.
Yeah.
Kelly, you are gonna break Tom Steak's heart if you keep on talking about how good John Hargrave is. Apparently, he's just a guy, and he's just a dude, and it's not gonna have that big of an impact. You're gonna break his heart.
That guy is something special.
Yeah,
that guy is something special. I've seen his Twitter, and that's a cringe. If you want to go check that out, you can cringe for days watching his stuff. So yeah, Hargraves on that Niners defense. The fact they added him to that defense still blows my mind. That they've got now Bosa and Hargraves on that same defense. That would be pretty scary defensive front for the Cowboys to go up against in October. But hey, man, the season's almost underway, man. So we only got a little over a week left to go, 8 days, and we'll see what's what.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, if I see any more videos or any more music videos that he posts, I'm gonna send them to you because it's always a good response I'm gonna get from you.
That's right.
Yeah, I just heard Mark he just made a comment in your chat. So we did our Cowboys Cave fantasy draft. This dude drafted all Cowboys. He took Dak Prescott 6th overall. Now I love Dak Prescott.
Yeah,
he has Kevontae Turpin as third receiver.
Yeah, he literally his roster is something for the ages.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he went and drafted. I mean, his entire roster is basically he only has one player that is either not a Dallas Cowboy or a former Dallas Cowboy. I mean, he's got Zeke on his roster. He's got Dalton Schultz on his roster. He went with the all Cowboys thing. So he did the opposite of what Ray did. Ray does here. He just went ahead and
if he wins it, he's going to start a new trend.
Yeah, he will. He will start a new trend. I will say off of the projections, he's the only guy out of the entire league that's projected at under 100 points the first week of the season. So, I mean, and that's on the low end of the spectrum. Most people are around 115 to 120 projected points, and Mark's sitting at 94.
I mean, who's he has his RB2? Deuce Vaughn, it's just
he's got. Did he drafted Deuce Vaughn?
He did draft one. That's the one guy that he drafted where he didn't, which was not on the Cowboys. He did draft Jacobs from the Raiders, but then Elliott is his running back too. And
y'all just wait for this Turpin masterclass this year. Just wait.
Yeah. It is wild. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm ready to get it going though, man.
Oh yeah, it'll be a good year because they're I don't know. It's
can y'all move on?
Cardinals could blow everything up. The Texans don't have their pick, so if they're bad, it's going to be a lot of good storylines this year. Seeing what Kyler does because he'll probably come playing his way out of Arizona.
I think
Yeah, they're just-
Arizona's done with him. They're tanking for Caleb Williams. They cut Colt McCoy, so they're all in on not winning. So
Yeah.
They'll probably end up
It's,
keeping him out all year just to make sure they don't win anything.
Yeah. Well, I drafted James Conner, so hopefully he can lead them to a win or two and some touchdowns. So that'll be good.
Best of luck to you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. But anything that y'all want to add?
No, man,
Or
just
any-
looking forward to a good season, man. Looking forward to this being a season that we can end this Super Bowl drought.
Yeah,
Oh,
been
yeah.
too long, man. I'm actually getting ready. My wife is in Vegas, so I'm working on the cave. I'm going to move some stuff around, so I always kind of redo it for the season. So that's my weekend plans. Put on the football. I'm looking at it's 14-14. It's almost halftime. They had a fumble which gave TCU a touchdown. But I tell you, Sanders' kid at quarterback, he's 20 for 24. I mean, 150 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's doing.
How
pretty
is
good
Hunter playing?
going up against? I mean, TCU's they're legit, top 20 team. So Colorado might be a little bit better. They're probably going to lose this game, but they might be a little bit better than people think.
Well, it'll be interesting.
I really like Sanders.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to get to watch them next week against Nebraska because see Nebraska fans out here. I love watching them. I love watching them play, and I try to root for them, man. The girl that I've kind of been dating or whatever, she's a Nebraska fan, so I try to support her, on that, obviously. But also, I kind of, it's when you see them lose in such just gut-wrenching fashion like they have the past several years. I mean, the other day they lost that 13-10. It was just it's a heartbreaker, and they play Colorado next week. So I'm very interested in to see what happens today because Nebraska plays them next week. So if Nebraska starts out 0-2 and Colorado beats them next week, there may be a meltdown here in Husker land.
Yeah, I tell you that kid Hunter Falk just was talking about it.
Yeah.
He's playing both ways. He had an unbelievable catch in the end zone, and it could have easily been a touchdown. They ruled a touchdown, then they reversed it. But I mean, you don't see that often where you see. I mean, he's playing
play both ways.
Both ways.
Yeah.
So it's I love their helmets. They're wearing all white with that white helmet and gold with the Buffalo. It's actually pretty slick. I'm a Miami fan. I ain't changing my allegiance, but I do like. I'm liking what I'm seeing with Colorado, and I'd love to see Dion be successful. It'd be pretty
Absolutely.
So,
I don't want to go off the rails, but I do want to touch on Nebraska. I mean, I watched the Nebraska game and cannot believe how abysmal their quarterback play is. So they should have totally won that game. And my whole thing with college football is that all you need is a competent quarterback in college football, and you'll be fine. So I mean,
I don't know that he'll finish the season as a starter because he did. He telegraphed 2 interceptions, just horrible interceptions. I don't know that he'll make it through the season unless they're going to show a lot of patience and chalk this up as a rebuild year, which there's a very good chance they do. New head coach and all that.
Matty Rule.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing. Even if they do struggle, I do think Nebraska will improve. Matt Rule's a good guy for
he's a good coach.
Yeah,
he's a good coach. Yeah. So I'm getting ready. I got some definitely going to be watching some college football today, man. There's the starting quarterback for Army, dual threat quarterback Bryson Daly, came from a little small the town that I lived in right outside of Lubbock. I live in a very small town outside of Lubbock, Texas. Abernathy, Texas, about 3,000 people, but football, he was the starting quarterback for them, and really athletic kid. Now he's playing at Army, and he's got the start. He's getting the start for them this year as a junior, so it'll be interesting to watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So good day of football, boys.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of that, thanks to the both of y'all for coming on such a busy day.
Absolutely.
Football is great, and we are definitely looking forward to having y'all on, plus Mario, in the future, if anything, playoff push, bye week maybe. But thank you again, and it's always a pleasure having y'all on.
Yeah.
For sure, man. Let us know.
Yeah, anytime, man. I enjoy it. Thanks again.
Of course. And Cowboy Nation, it's going to be a great year. And, in the future, we're going to hear more from Jerry. I'm looking forward to it. But any closing words, Mr. Jones?
Well, all I got to say is Dallas Cowboys fans, get your popcorn ready.
T.O.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See you later, Cowboys
this is for
Nation.
you.
Oh wow!
Never call me a Trayvon Diggs hater again.
I have my Leighton Vander Esch jersey in the closet. I may have to take it out. I was going to buy an Overshown jersey, but then he got hurt, and hopefully
Yeah.
he goes to 0. So, but that's a next off season thing. But thanks again, y'all, and we're looking forward to a great week of college football and an even better week next week of the National Football League, and hopefully Dallas can stay healthy and have a great year and end their very long postseason or Super Bowl drought.
All right. Well, till next time, boys.
Thank you.
All right.